Hi everyone, and welcome to Tragic Hollywood Star of the Week. So today's Star of the Week is John Belushi, the brilliant comedian who got a start in the Second City and Saturday Night Live, but unfortunately he did everything to excess. He ate to excess, and he partied to excess, and he took drugs, and he died at the age of 33, so his career was short but memorable because we all remember him on Saturday Night Live. And we also remember him in movies such as The Blues Brothers and Animal House. Anyway, John Belushi was born in Chicago in 1949, and he first got his start in comedy by appearing in Second City, the Second City comedy troupe, which was based in Chicago. This is also where a lot of comedians got their start, including Chris Farley, and I think Lorraine Newman and others from Saturday Night Live actually cut their teeth in the Second City comedy troupe. Because he was so wonderful in the Second City, he got the attention of Lorne Michaels, who was a producer, and he was putting together a new type of sketch comedy show, and it was sort of like in the form of Laugh-In, a bunch of sketches, things like that. And he decided he was going to appeal to a much younger and hipper audience, and he wanted comedians that would be sort of cutting edge. And somebody said that these people from Second City are really good, and you should check out John Belushi in particular. And so he saw John Belushi perform at Second City, and he thought, that he's really good. I'm going to try to cast him for my new show. And the new show was called Saturday Night Live. So the rest is history. This was in 1976. And he put together this amazing cast, of which John Belushi was one. And John Belushi shot to superstardom and quickly became one of the standout cast members on the show, with such characters as Samurai Man.
And now another edition of Samurai Hotel.
His phenomenal imitation of Joe Cocker.
When I'm thinking you, I stop myself a crying. 'Cause she can't waste my time.
His the B-Man imitation. Just all sorts of characters that he played on Saturday Night Live that we still remember with fondness. I think he was pretty good in just about every sketch that he did. He stood out in. Anyway, so, he was good on Saturday Night Live, and he loved being on the show, but he did have conflicts with a couple of the cast members, namely Chevy Chase. Him and Chevy Chase did not like each other at all. And this was kind of disconcerting for John, because he was used to being the star and having his own way, and Chevy Chase was also used to being the star, and he thought that John was kind of stealing his thunder. Whatever. No one really liked Chevy Chase. So, I don't think it was John's fault that nobody liked Chevy Chase. But in 1978, John did a movie. He wasn't the star of the movie, but he made a big enough impression in it that he was quickly, realized that he did have star potential. And this movie was Animal House. Now, I remember when Animal House came out. I was only 18, and this made a big impression on my generation. Everybody started throwing toga parties, and everybody started yelling road trip. And part of this film's success was because John Belushi was so great in this movie. He was so over the top with his mayonnaise scene in the cafeteria and his constant drunken debauchery throughout the film.
Really, can't you?
Oh, no, don't worry. Just keep your hands and feet away from his mouth.
Don't you have any respect for yourself?
This is absolutely gross. That boy is a P.I.G. pig.
See if you can guess what I am now. I'm a zit. Get it?
Anyway, Animal House was a big film for me. I remember it. It was a big film for a lot of people. It was about college life and dorm life, and there hadn't been that many movies made about that were comedies, and this movie kind of hit a chord with a lot of younger people. So, that was what kind of catapulted him to stardom outside of Saturday Night Live. And the other thing that happened was him and Dan Aykroyd formed what was called the Blues Brothers. It was initially just a skit. They would go out and warm up the audience on Saturday Night Live. They would be playing a couple of gentlemen who were blues musicians, but they were so good at singing the blues and so good at performing this that it became a phenomenon on its own. And both of them managed to parlay this into several albums, concerts, and even a movie. So John Belushi figured after he was a success in the Blues Brothers and after he was a success in Animal House, he didn't need Saturday Night Live, and he didn't need the grind of a weekly show, which is really a grind, okay? And really a lot of hard work, that he could make a career out of in films. Him and Dan Aykroyd both believed this, and so they ended up leaving Saturday Night Live in 1979. Anyway, but before he left, John Belushi had already developed a dependency on drugs and an addiction to both cocaine and heroin. Everyone on Saturday Night Live did cocaine. This is the 70s, and it was almost an accepted fact that if you were rich and young in the 1970s, that you would do cocaine. So cocaine was as common on the set of Saturday Night Live as donuts. But John Belushi took it to excess. He did everything to excess, including drugs. And he developed a serious drug problem while he was an SNL cast member. At one point, he was actually suspended from SNL temporarily because he couldn't get it together with his drug use. John Belushi eventually married cocaine with heroin, narcotics, booze. So he was doing the whole enchilada. The drug use really exacerbated this problem. So anyway, he was on a free fall. In fact, when he was making the Blues Brothers, John Landis was having so much trouble with him. He was barely functioning by 1980, like seriously barely functioning. And John Landis confronted him in his bungalow on the set. He was disheveled. He was dirty. He didn't look like he'd taken a shower in days. And John Landis said, "You're trying to kill yourself because that's what's going to happen. You're just going to die young. I don't understand what you're doing to yourself. Do you not want to make this movie, or do you want to make this movie?" And then he took about $100,000 worth of cocaine and flushed it down the toilet. But as to my knowledge, I don't think John ever went to rehab. This was not like a big thing back in the early 80s, late 70s. I guess there was such thing as rehab, but it wasn't as common as it is today. So to my knowledge, no one ever grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and pulled him up and told him he needed to go to rehab. So by the early 80s, he was a complete, practically dysfunctional addict. And it was really sad. He'd made a couple of films. One of them was Continental Divide, and the other one was Neighbors. And neither one of them had done very well at the box office. Not as well as Animal House, not as well as the Blues Brothers. So he felt like he might have been kind of on a slide. So by the time he checked into a private bungalow in the historic Chateau Marmont, which is off the Sunset Strip. And the Chateau Marmont is a story unto itself. It's housed many, many famous stars because it is so private and so exclusive. They have bungalows on the grounds that you can't get into unless you've got a key. And those bungalows are very private. And John Belushi knew this. And so he checked into the Chateau Marmont on February 28th. In one of these private bungalows where he could just do his drugs. So he spent the last week of his life from February 28th to March 5th basically partying up and down the strip. There were a lot of nightclubs, the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Trocadero, these places. And there was also private parties, and just like Chris Farley did. you know, in 1997 when he was in Chicago, and he spent the last week of his life going up and down, partying as many places as he could find. This is what John Belushi was doing. Just on the last day of his life, he got money from his manager, a lot of money. He went out and went to a few nightclubs, went to a few comedy clubs. He saw his friend Robin Williams and his friend Robert De Niro. And then he started partying with his drug dealer, a woman named Kathy Smith. And they got shot up with, both of them, I guess, got shot up with a speedball. But this really affected John. I guess he'd done a bunch of drinking and drugs earlier that day. And so he was violently ill after that. He violently sick for like 2 or 3 times while they were driving back to the chateau. And by the time they got back to the chateau, he said he was having a hard time breathing. He said he was just going to go to bed. And he did just go to bed. But the problem is he never woke up. And she claimed that she heard noises coming from his bedroom, and she just assumed it was him snoring, but I think it was probably a death rattle is what she was actually hearing. On March 5th, dead from an acute drug overdose. But actually when the coroner looked at his body, he said he didn't really have the body of a 33-year-old man. He had the body of a 70-year-old man. So basically, he was suffering from an enlarged heart, congestion of the spleen and the lungs, a swollen brain, and so he wasn't in good shape. Even if he'd been in good shape, he might have survived that amount of drug intoxication, but he wasn't in good shape. So, you know, he was on a fast track to an early death. It's kind of sad. So he's buried on Martha's Vineyard, and an urban legend has it that his wife decided that she was going to move his remains because she was afraid of vandalism, but she was going to keep the headstone there. And during this process of moving his remains over to another part of the cemetery, the coffin slipped and fell on the ground and popped open. This is an urban legend. I don't know if this really happened or not. But there you go. Anyway, this is a sad story, a very sad story of John Belushi. He was a big part of my generation, the late 70s kids generation. We all took to Saturday Night Live like ducks to water, and we loved that show, and we continue to watch it even today. But we were the first generation to watch Saturday Night Live, and John Belushi was sort of the first generation of comedian from our age group that really made an impression on us. So anyway, R.I.P. John Belushi. So thank you. Again, I'm going to say, can you please like and subscribe to this channel? Because if you don't like and subscribe, then it's hard for me to keep doing this. And also, please buy my books, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Dead, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead, and my novel, my noir novel, which is called Goodbye, Angel, Goodbye, When Dreams Aren't Enough. I do have a chapter about Chris Farley in my newest Tragic Hollywood book, Tragic Hollywood, Beautiful, Glamorous, and Still Dead. He was a huge fan of John Belushi's, and unfortunately, he went out just like John Belushi. So anyway, thank you guys again, and thank you for watching my video, and I will see you guys next week.